All right, cool. So you guys should be seeing, the title slide. If not, or you're in the wrong talk, you can leave now. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and get started. So hook, line, and sinker, unraveling the bait of modern phishing. It's by me, Nichols. So the quick agenda. So we're going to do a brief introduction. I'll just tell you guys a little bit about myself, how I got here, what I'm doing, stuff like that. We'll cover phishing at a high level, what it is, just a basic, definition of phishing, what it isn't, stuff like that, why it's important. We'll walk through how to scan an email, from top to bottom, things to look for, some tools that you can reference. We'll do, we've got some subheadings here. So like the sender, the recipient, the greetings, links and attachments, things that once you have a process make a lot of sense when you bring them together and kind of determine the validity of an email message. I'll show you some cool fish that I see out in the wild. So like convincing or not so convincing phishing emails, depending on what you think and your training and stuff like that. And then I'll kind of end with skills that I learned in the military that translate very well into this and cybersecurity in general. But then also like some resources too that I use to stay on top of, cybersecurity as a whole in the industry and whatnot. So yeah, we'll start with who am I? So my name's Nichols again. You can check me out down in LinkedIn. I don't use any other social media platforms. I struggle enough just to stay on LinkedIn, to be honest with you. But I've been in IT and cybersecurity for about 15 years. I've been a reservist almost the entire time, minus, training in schools and stuff like that and deployments. I've been extremely fortunate to work, in military, government work, like federal government, state government, local government, and also like industry, civilian roles. I spent almost 10 years in industry working at, small, medium, large organizations. And I have about 5 years at the federal government. And then, my military time throughout that whole kind of doing, reserve, weekend warrior type stuff, and doing some schools. I recently wrote a book. It's called How to Catch a Fish. Came out earlier this year in about June. It's about a lot of what we're talking about today is things we cover in the book. It's how to scan an email, pull out indicators that identify it being as malicious or suspicious at best, how to handle it if you are compromised. You click this link on accident, you click this attachment on accident. Like, what do you do? How do you get better? And how can you help others, identify these phishing emails, stop them, and make it harder ultimately for the attackers. I've spent most of my career working in defense. I've done some offensive work, some pen testing, stuff like that. But my core is in incident response and defensive cyber operations. So planning, defending networks, doing that, on the military side as well. I had a pretty traditional military career to date. I started out as a signal officer, did that for a couple of years. When cyber became a thing, I transitioned over into that, went through the cyber pipeline. I was on a cyber protection team doing defensive work for a while. And then I took my current role, which is in a special operations unit as an advisor. Really awesome, niche, unique position. Was able to deploy with that team last year to Iraq and do an advisory mission, which was awesome. Got to work a lot with partner forces and see, how they do cybersecurity and how they respond to incidents and stuff like that. I have a couple certifications, some SANS courses, stuff like that. I've strategically avoided the CISSP, and I probably won't ever take it. So that's kind of a plug. If you think you need that to get into the field, you don't. A lot of HR people think they do, but it's not necessary. And I've done training everywhere, industry, government, military, all over, mostly aligning to cybersecurity in a lot of them. And that's kind of what brought me here. To speak and to try and give back and do kind of stuff like that. Because, a lot of people have security awareness programs in their organization or they, they're aware of phishing and stuff like that. And the training doesn't really help you identify phishing emails too much. You get these simulated messages, you get them every month or quarter or whatever to a month. You click on the link or you don't, and they make you watch a video, you put it on in the background and do something else, or you next through it really quick. And we don't do a good job of teaching people how to do it, but also, like this impacts our parents, our grandparents, our wives, our husbands, our children, like everyone has an email, everyone gets phishing emails. It's not just the corporate environment that you can protect your organization. Like you need to protect yourself on your own. So it's a vital skill that a lot of people need to know, not just people working in cybersecurity or IT or in the office environment, kind of all over the board. So we'll start with, what is phishing? Phishing comes in many forms. It isn't just email related, but for our talk today, we're only really going to be talking about email driven phishing, but it is communication impersonating a trusted entity to achieve an action. So basically someone is trying to be something they aren't, or they've taken over an account that they don't own, or they're just trying to be anyone else, like they don't have to be a trusted entity, but they're trying to trick you into doing something, essentially. So they want you to click a link. They want you to provide sensitive information to them. They want you to interact with an attachment or something like that. They use these different techniques, this social engineering, to get you to do these things. They write you a convincing email. They compromise a trusted source that you talk to. They pretend to be an organization that they're not, with the intent of you committing some sort of action. And it might be immediately, it might be drawn out over a couple of days, weeks, months. It just depends. But that's all it really is. And it can be used in other methods, which we see in text messages. So SMS, like smishing, that happens. You get a fishy or a weird text message with a link. There's like phone calls, like pretext. You can do that. There's emails. There's many forms that they can get you to do this type of stuff. But like I said, we're going to focus more on the email side of it, because that's what's crushing us as an industry. That's what's crushing people, organizations all over the board right now. So what type of techniques, like how do they do this? And we'll get into this more a little bit with examples, but these are some of the common social engineering tactics to look out for in emails. Your friend sends you a strange message, like you talk to your friends, they send you something out of the blue. They might be like stranded somewhere, they need money or something like that. Like it might be good to, verify that, like pick up a phone and give them a phone call. Talk to someone like an intermediary, like third party that or something, or test them, like ask them, hey, like, remember that time we played basketball here and, you never played basketball in your life? That could be a sign. So things like that. Your emotions are heightened. So they're trying to do like some sort of like fear, uncertainty, doubt, something like that. Like your account's going to get turned off. There's a fine, there's a fee, there's money that you're supposed to be paid or something like that. The request is urgent. So it's really quick. You have 24 hours, you have an hour, you have a day, whatever. But it's something that like you have to disregard your own instincts and act quickly, or your instincts are making you act at a manner that you normally wouldn't, because you're on the clock. You've got an hour or something and everything's gonna end. The offer feels too good to be true. So this, like, my favorite one of this is like a lottery that you never played. So it's like, how could you win $1 million if you never played the lottery? Well, you can't. But if someone emails you and says, hey, you won this, you never played though, like it's probably a scam. You're receiving help you didn't ask for. I think a lot of this comes into like IT tech support type scams, where they maybe give you a phone call or they send you an email with something saying, hey, we found a virus on your computer, click this link to fix it, stuff like that. Like if you didn't ask for the help, they're probably not, a legitimate source that's trying to help you out. Verify again in a second or third medium. And then if the sender can't prove their identity, if they're pretending to be someone they're not, you challenge them, or you look at a directory, or you call someone and you try and verify it elsewhere and it's not making sense. There's probably a reason why it's not making sense. So why phishing? Like, why is this a big deal? Because it's prevalent. It's involved in a lot of breaches. It happens every single day. If you've had an email account longer than, I don't know, a day or two, you're probably going to get some spam or phishing emails. But it happens to everyone. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter what your background is. If you have email, you're going to get a phishing email at some time. The Verizon data breach report, that's one of the best reports that you can look for cybersecurity statistics to learn about what's going on in the industry for breaches. They come out every year. They look at the last year's breach data and they give you statistics, graphs, all this crazy stuff. That's where this one comes from. Highly recommend it. It's in our resources tab at the back. Really, really interesting, great write-up. The next thing, Google blocks 100 million phishing emails a day. Like they're one of the most popular email providers, and they see phishing all day, every day, and they still get through. Even blocking 100 million, it's not a big deal. Like there's still a lot of phishing emails that go through. Phishing works. Like attackers aren't stopping because it still works. I said earlier, I've been doing this for 15 years. Phishing was prevalent when I started 15 years ago, and it's still prevalent right now in 2023, and it still will be in years to come, because the training isn't great. We're preying on people. We don't know what to do. We don't know how to handle this, and it makes them money, so they're going to keep doing it until they can't anymore. Training videos, I touched on this a little bit. Hopefully no one here works for one of the security awareness companies. If you do, sorry, but everyone loves to talk about how great their videos are. And some videos are good, some are better than others. But in my opinion, it's not the only way to learn how to catch phishing emails. Like there needs to be another process, another method. I don't think it's as effective as it should be. And most organizations, they just stick to those videos and they just keep doing them at an interval, yearly, quarterly, whatever, forever. And you never really test if they're that effective. And most of them, even having doing this for years and seeing it, and I've been in organizations that have run, the high-end phishing simulations, the low-end ones, open source ones, everything in between, you're still getting like around 20%. 40 might be a little bit high. That was a statistic I pulled. I think 20-ish is about what most people see as click rates. So even with all this training and stuff, 1 in 5 people are still clicking phishing emails all day, every single day. So, I mean, I know you're never going to get that to 0 unless you take people out of the environment, but 20% is still pretty high. And there's got to be a better way to train people and do stuff. And that's kind of where this comes in, was teaching people what to look for and what not to click on and how to handle them correctly. So the impacts, phishing, it causes a bunch of the training that you have to go to, the mandatory training that everyone has to do, in the military, out of the military. A lot of that has come from phishing, people clicking on links that they shouldn't have, breaches that have happened because of a number of reasons, but a lot of them start with phishing. So that's what people hone in on. They cause a lot of headaches, people, incident response teams. Like I've been on a few, and, nights, weekends, a lot of incidents happen on Friday afternoon, and it's a pain because you have plans and now you either have to leave your team and they can handle it on their own, or you're working, Friday night into Saturday morning and however long it takes on Saturday. And then one of the other biggest ones is like the loss of funds. So a lot of these are geared, all of them actually, let me rephrase that, are geared towards making money. Cyber actors in most cases want to make money off of their attacks. So these are usually financially motivated. So a phishing email, it's intended to generate income for these organizations. And they could be in a number of ways. It could be they could sell that, like your compromised credentials. They could ask you for wire fraud or wiring money. They could sell your information. There's a number of ways for them to generate this. But it costs a lot of organizations money. Criminals make money, but also nation states fund things. And one of the biggest, organizations that do this is North Korea. North Korea hacks for their government. Like they hack to make money to provide it for their government. There's tons of open source reporting about this. They're not quiet about it. They're set up and they hire or they force people to hack, almost like in sweatshops, where like they'll send a bunch of hackers into a room and say, hey, here's your quota. You have to make whatever, a couple $1,000s a month. Whatever you make above that, you can keep, or we'll give you $500 to live off. The rest goes to our government so that we can fund things. And they do that all the time. In 2021, the average cost, 4.65 million. That's probably a little bit high, because there are small, medium businesses that lose, much lower than that. But if you look across the board, that's kind of what Verizon was saying. And small businesses, and even people, but small businesses can get crushed by this. I worked in an organization once. We were in a manufacturing environment. We had people contact us from time to time, saying that they had been breached and they were looking for assistance. And the breach had impersonated, our organization. And one was this mom and pop business. I think it was legitimately like a father and a mother, and their son was like the IT guy. And they got an email saying, hey, you owe us this invoice. You need to pay it immediately. It was like $75,000. And they're like, can you also wire it to this different account? We're setting this new account up, blah, blah. And, they played the part pretty convincing, and they explained to them why it was important. And this company sent them the money. And then, a couple weeks later, our organization reached out and said, hey, we never got paid for this order. What's going on? And they're like, yeah, you did. Here's the receipt. And we were like, we don't have a bank in China. Would never do that. And they're like, oh, this isn't good. And, unfortunately, there was nothing we could do. They had wired the money. They were told to contact the FBI, and law enforcement and stuff like that. And that amount, I doubt there was a lot of action that occurred, but for a small business, that's huge. I mean, that's one employee's salary or two employees' salaries and stuff like that. And and oh, by the way, they still had to pay us the $70,000 or $75,000 for the tires or whatever it was that we gave them. So they weren't just like given that stuff for free; they had to pay it twice. So business email compromise, horrible thing. It's up like 300% this year. I just read an article about that yesterday. It's not going away, and it's very prevalent. To walk through it, we cover this a little bit in my book. There's a bunch of articles about it, but essentially, like, an attacker impersonates a trusted vendor. So they compromise an account, or they spin up an email impersonating that. So let's just say it's CNN.com. They might register CM.com. It kind of looks like CNN, or CNN with 3 N's, stuff like that. Then they'll find a vendor. They'll go to that vendor and be like, hey, you're our news source. We pay you every time. Let's email you, tell you we need this invoice, get that communication back and forth, and then all of a sudden slip in that send your money elsewhere, stuff like that. They wire transfer the money, it's gone, and the attackers, do something with that money. They have some way of getting it out and using it somehow. But this is very common, happening all over the world. It was mostly with large businesses, probably about 5 or 6 years ago. Now the large businesses are a little bit better off with their cybersecurity. In some cases, I know that's debatable, but in a lot of cases they are. The small, medium businesses aren't. So what I've seen personally is they're targeting small and medium businesses now because they don't have the controls, the people, the processes in place, and they still have money. So they might have to hit a few more of them to get the payout, but they're still lucrative. So where do we start? So you get these phishing emails. I've been talking about it now for about 15 minutes. Like, what do we do? And it's just like you have to get your own process starting from top to bottom. And we start, at the very basic level. We have to look at who the sender is. And in this one, we have a great example. This is supposedly from Amazon. At first glance, it looks like a legitimate email address, but if you look close at this sender at the very top, it's Maison.com, not Amazon. So that's the first thing you need to be looking at is, hey, let me look closely. Is this a sender I know? Is it trusted? Is it someone I interact with? Should I be interacting with them? All that kind of stuff. Is it spelled correctly? And, sometimes it might display that it is, but it might not, but that's the first place to start. And then once you've done that, you can kind of start moving down the list and just do this, methodically. So the next thing, we're going to go into a little bit about the domains. So I've got it like laid out here. The first part of this, we've got the display name. That's what shows up in the email. The username, that's like Nick or, Sam Smith, John Smith, Nick.Oles, whatever it is. That's usually where you're going to put the username first. Everything after the @ symbol is a domain. You can have a subdomain like we have here, and then the main domain. You can have just a main domain. It just depends how the email is set up. And then at the end, the .org, it could be .com, .org, .gov. It's what the TLD is. But like, as you can see here in this example, this is what it looks like in the actual email. Like it displays orders. It's got a subdomain, an actual domain, and a TLD. It's asking for, a wire transfer, and, it's got this order.html, which we'll get to in a little bit, but is interesting. The next thing, so if we're going down this process, the next thing to look at is the greeting. What is the greeting? Is it calling me by name? Is it a first name, a last name, a username? Is it spelled correctly? Is it something broad and generic? Is it just like friend, customer, all, whatever? This is used to establish credibility. It's used to establish trust. It's used for you to understand that this person or they know you enough to call you a certain name. Like, what if my name is Nick. What if I go by Gary or James or something like that? A lot of people have weird nicknames. Like, that would raise some flags to me. Like, why is this guy calling me Nick when everyone I know calls me Gary or whatever? Maybe they don't really know me, or maybe they do and they just messed up. I don't know. But that's the next thing to look at and kind of understand, like, okay, that's kind of weird. Maybe not something on its own that I can say this email 100% is wrong, but it's an indicator. And the whole point of this is look at all of your indicators together objectively and come up with a determination. There's no one point that I can point at an email and say 100% this means it's all bad. But there's also something I could say 100% that means it's all good. It doesn't matter. Like, you have to look at this as a whole. Then we get into the content of the email. So this is, the body of the message. Like, what are they trying to tell you? What are they saying to you? What are they talking to you about? And these are some of the things that we talked about in a previous slide. Like, is there a sense of urgency? Is there a negative action if I don't do that? Is there some sort of windfall, like a bunch of money I'm going to get? Is there a contest I didn't enter? Is there some sort of trust? Like, are they saying, hey, I need your help. Please do this for me? Or what I've seen a lot is like CEO scams where they'll contact a junior employee and say, hey, I need your help. I'm in a very important meeting. I can't talk right now. I need you to go buy $300 in Apple gift cards. Like, I've worked for quite a few CEOs and they would never ask me to buy Apple gift cards or Amazon gift cards or whatever. Insert whatever gift, Google Play gift cards. They would never ask me for that. But it's kind of odd, and you would want to look at that. Is there any kind of like empathy and support? Like, someone's dog is lost. There's like a natural disaster or an event, or there's COVID-19 was a great example of that. Like, and you're trying to, support them or give them money or help them out. And you're really not, you're just funding criminals. So then the next thing, so say we've looked at the content, we looked at the greeting, the sender, there might be links or attachments. So that's the most common. When I first started in the industry a long time ago, attachments were popular. They were common because the antivirus and the detection and the email scanning tools weren't that great. So it wasn't that hard for an attacker to send an attachment that was malicious and for it to get through all these technical controls. Now I think that's a lot harder because we have really good email scanning tools. We have really good antivirus. There's EDR, SOAR, all these different tools that you can have on an endpoint that'll scan stuff when you execute it. And they're not perfect, but they make it harder. What is a lot easier is with our whole infrastructure now, a lot of stuff being cloud related, a lot of things being web enabled, like spinning up malicious links is much easier. So I think what I've seen is that links are becoming much more prevalent. But the first thing you can do, look at the link. Does it make sense? In this example, we've got an Amazon email. This one looks legit at first glance. It looks like it's Amazon.com fraud prevention, which is the theme of this email. But if I hover over it, which I just take my cursor, I do not click. I'm very intentional and purposeful. And I just put it over the link and hold it. In most operating systems and browsers and environments, whatever mail platform you're using, it'll preview you what this link is going to. And you can take a look at it and say, does this make sense? Is it a shortener? This is a shortener right here, bit.ly. It shrinks your URL down to a smaller link. That's all it does. It doesn't do any security. If anything, it obscures it a little bit, but there's ways around it very easily. But you can look at it and say, this doesn't make sense. It does, whatever. Maybe I need to look at this closer. Here's another example. The URLs don't match, just like the previous one. We've got a UPS one. If you hover over it, it's got an iCar email. This is just an example that would raise my level of suspicion. I'm like, this doesn't make sense at all. But again, not 100%, but it's another indicator to add to our list. So what can we do? So this is like a pretty easy process, and it can be a little bit intimidating at first, but as long as you're careful, it's safe and easy to do. So you can copy this link and put it in. If maybe you can't read it or it's hard to read, you can open up Notepad++, an awesome tool to have, on your desktop. You right click. So I've got the mouse over here on the left-hand side. If you left click it, it's going to take you to that resource. So you do not want to left click it. If you right click it, it will enable you to copy the link in most environments. I mean, I'm sure there's some outlier or some weird version of Linux that it might not work. But in most cases, Windows is probably the most common operating system here. That's what it's going to do. You can right click it, copy this link, and then open up Notepad++ and throw it in there. And then you can look at it a little bit closer and say, hey, I couldn't read that all the way, or maybe I want to check the spelling of something in another tab, stuff like that. But you're really at no risk at this point. You haven't interacted with the resource. You've put it in a safe place. You can take a closer look at it now, or you can share this out or do whatever else you need to do with it. But if you want to go a step further, you can use some tools to analyze this link and take a look at what other people know about it, maybe what it does, what characteristics it has, where it's going, stuff like that. So the link analysis tool is you provide them a hyperlink and they provide additional details about this link. So they will run it through like a reputation scanner. They'll run it through what they know about this resource and determine, what have people reported as phishing, as people reported as malware. Is it a good site? Is it a bad site? And it's not 100%, but it's a good place to start. Some will scan it and say, oh yeah, this is super weird, it just got spun up today, I don't know about it, or yeah, people have reported this. Some won't. Some though will let you interact with the page, and the two ones that I think are the best right now, that I use the most commonly, that I tell everyone to use, are VirusTotal and URLscan.io. So VirusTotal, awesome resource, free. Every place I've ever worked at, is a big fan of VirusTotal. They use it in their environment. They recommend it, whatever. I mean, there are a little bit, just a caveat, if this is a corporate environment, you need to understand, like, am I okay with my organization letting me put this in a tool? This is an open source tool. That data does go to them. I mean, in most places, they're going to be okay with it, but you do need to check internally. For home use, that's completely on you. If you want to use it and put your information, your links in here, I do. I trust them. I mean, I don't have anything that sensitive that I'm like, okay, I don't want this going to VirusTotal. Like, if it's a bad link, I want them to look at it. So I always start with VirusTotal. You can do, this is a screenshot of the page. You can do links, URLs, files, and you can search, like hashes, stuff like that. URL scan, very similar, but URL scan actually lets you look at the page. They take a screenshot of the page on their behalf, which is super cool. This is kind of two other, pages. I guess VirusTotal explained a little bit more. So the top is the same screenshot we saw before. On the left, if you were to submit a link to it, this is 0 results. So this is coming back clean. They have a list of resources they check, and it changes varying like over time. This one, it looks like there was 54 on the left. On the right, we've got a malicious link, essentially. So I submitted this link to it. It's got 13 of 87 resources that are saying it's malicious. Now, these resources are cybersecurity organizations, they're companies. So they've submitted what they know is bad to VirusTotal, and then VirusTotal checks, on your behalf. So usually for me, honestly, if one or two resources say it's bad, I'm kind of like cool with being like, all right, this is probably a bad link or something like that. But yeah, again, no real risk to you by submitting these to them, other than, the concerns of your organization. But otherwise, like, you're still not visiting the site. They're doing this on your behalf. They're giving you the information, and you can, kind of review it at your own leisure or share it accordingly. URL scan, they do this a little bit more in depth. So, a lot of the same stuff. They're still looking at reputation bases. They're still looking at, lists. They're still looking at what they know. They're doing a little bit more extraction. So here you can see, it's kind of hard to see in this image, but if you go to the site, and we might in our practical exercise, it'll tell you what the submitted URL is, what the effective URL. So if it's a shortener, it'll extract it. But then what I love over here is on the right-hand side of these screenshots, it gives you a screenshot of the page, and you can click on that and look at it and be like, oh, this is kind of weird. Like, maybe it's just a blog that it was a resource that they wanted you to go to, or maybe it's, on the right-hand side here, it's, I don't know, I think this is like some Russian sketchy page, but it lets you go a little bit more in depth and look at these. And it even tells me, like, on the right-hand side, this is potentially malicious. So super cool things to add to, to your process while you're scanning these emails. Cool. So now I have a little bit of a practical exercise. So I kind of explained to you guys what to look for. The simulation here, like, I'm not going to send you guys all a phishing email, but I've got a bunch of links right here in the presentation, and I'll put them in the chat for you guys. And what my intention here, is like, can you grab these, open up VirusTotal, open up URLscan.io, one of the two, or both, whatever you want to do. Practice just copying the link, throwing it in the tool, and looking at the output. I'm going to copy these really quick. Actually, I have them already in Notepad++, and I'm going to throw them in the chat. I'll give you guys about 5 minutes, just really quickly, to kind of do this on your own. Oh, those came by kind of ugly, didn't they? I'll do them one at a time. Yeah, I mean, you guys will just have to trust me, but none of these are like legitimate malware or anything like. Oh, that one didn't copy at all. There might be one that's a Rickroll. Uh, yes, I have kids, and I have listened to Baby Shark many, 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 many times. That would be cool. So, Chris, you had a question about the first link. Uh, I'm assuming it's tiny URL. Yes, Brad, 100%. If I see something that looks like base 64 encoded, I'm automatically like, this is probably malware. I think I copied the wrong one. I would have to look at it really quick, but it should only take a second to load, and then I can answer your question. ArcSight Threat Intelligence, are these places just third-party vendors to assess URLs? Yeah, so that they are. ArcSight is a cybersecurity organization that does threat intelligence stuff like that. So there are additional resources that take a look at that. Did you get that information from VirusTotal, or was that from URL Scan? I guess that question is for you, Chris. VirusTotal, yes, 100% VirusTotal. Um, that is exactly what they do. They're taking information, signatures from all of the security vendors that they have, checking that known good resource and reporting on it. And again, that number changes. Like sometimes it's I think in the 80s usually, but they have different vendors that are willing to give a 90 right now. Give it so criminal IP, ArcSight Threat Intelligence. Yeah, that's what you were talking about. Um, yeah, that was part of it. But you can rickroll someone too if they don't know how to do this, and you can teach them how to do it. Um, all right, cool. So I don't know. We had about 5 or 6 minutes. I'm going to assume everyone was able to get through it. If you need another minute, I'll talk slow for a second, but otherwise we'll keep rolling through the slides. And I saw there was a question too. I'll take a look at that at the end and we'll address it. All right, cool. So hopefully that was cool for you guys. If not, whatever, you can give me feedback and say it was lame. But I thought it was. So attachments, the next thing we're going to talk about. So you guys all get email attachments. It's simply just a file sent in an email. These are the kind of basic ones, like Word documents, PowerPoint, Excel, PDFs, like things like that. They're used obviously to deliver malicious things as well. So knowing, what's good, what's not, what's normal, what to do with them. Attachments aren't as easy to interact with safely as links. So we don't have a practical exercise, but we do have, some tools we can talk through and how to handle this. But things to ask yourself. So you get these attachments, they come to your email. Like the first thing I always ask myself is, does this attachment make sense? Like, is someone telling me they're sending me a PowerPoint presentation, but it's a Word document? We had that example earlier. It was like a wire transfer and it was an HTML document. Things like that. Do they tell me it's a budget and it's I would expect that to be maybe in a PowerPoint or sorry, an Excel file, and they send me a PowerPoint file or a WAV file or an MP3 file or something like that. And I'm like, dude, come on, get out of here. There's no way a budget is in this. Did I ask for this file? That's the next thing. Like, did I want this sent to me? Is this something that I need for my job? Like if I'm not in finance or accounting, like I don't need to look at budgets. Like that's not my thing. Like I don't need to look at bonus information, even if it's interesting to me. That's not part of my job. So I shouldn't, and could also be a bad attachment. Does it align with email content? Like maybe I talk to Bob all the time and he sends me a PowerPoint every week and we go over it. And then one week he sends me an Excel file and he's like, hey man, check out the PowerPoint for this week. And I'm like, dude, Bob, what's up, man? This doesn't make any sense. It doesn't align with the content or our reputation. And then this is on more of like a personal level. Like, should you extract and analyze this? The way to do it, I've got a screenshot down here, is in most browser or like web or applications, like desktop applications, you can right click an attachment or you can click like an arrow box or something like that, and you can save this attachment as. The problem is you saving it is taking that code and that file from your email account and storing it on your computer. Like there are viruses that are pretty nasty that can run or can execute just by you downloading them. So it presents some security risks. But if you're willing to try or you are interested, you 100% can do it. Maybe on like a standalone PC, maybe on a virtual environment, or maybe you're just like, hey, I've got all my stuff backed up. I'm going to do it on my PC. And kind of go from there. But this is how you do it. You save it in a location, and then you're going to use some of the same tools that we talked about previously for links to get a reputation of them, get a baseline. So Virus Total, again, that is my favorite go-to first tool. This very similar things that they're doing for links, they're doing for attachments. So they have all these cybersecurity companies. They give them signatures for known bad files. They update them probably like every minute or sooner. I don't know the interval, but very, very frequently. They scan the file, they give it a hash that you submit. Hash is just like a fingerprint, like a unique ID for it. And then they run it through all these tools. So you're getting whatever, 90, 80 cybersecurity companies like input on it at once. So they will take a look at it and they'll give you this report back and tell you what it is. And like a lot of times you can tell what it is by what they categorize it. So this looks like backdoor, backdoor, backdoor. It's probably a piece of malware used to backdoor something, like, or it's a backdoor into your organization or something like that. Not always. Sometimes it just says like generic virus, stuff like that. But again, same thing as links. Like if you work at an organization or you're trying to work in an organization, you're going to want to know like what the policy is on this. I've worked at a lot of big places. They had no issues with us doing this. It just depends. And at home, like I would do this on my own. I don't have any concerns with that. Any run URL scan will also do this as well. No, actually they won't. They don't do that. They only do it for URLs. Any run is the other tool that we're going to use for sandboxing. So sandboxing is a controlled environment. They detonate this attachment, and actually they let you interact with it. So any run, you can have a paid license for it, but the free one works okay. I think there's like a count of how many you can submit. But basically what happens if they spin up an operating system, you tell them what it should be. They will open this file. They will monitor, the network traffic, any weird process activity, stuff like that, tell you about it. And then they'll actually let you interact with it. So like sometimes what I've seen with this is like Maybe it's a file that has a password and they send the password in the body. You might have to type in the password, or maybe you want to click on whatever the Word document that pops up and read it a little bit closer. But again, super cool. You're not doing this on your PC. They're doing it on your behalf. You're just interacting with it. And, cybersecurity teams will be a little bit more advanced. They might have an isolated standalone machine or network that they can do this on. But this is something you can do at home or point people to and say, hey, if it's an attachment, you want to look at it closer, you can use one of these sandbox tools. And there's other sandbox tools. I cover more in my book. There's 2 or 3 other popular ones, and they ebb and flow over the years. Joe Sandbox is another really popular one that I've used for years. And AnyRun is more newer into the field, but also a really cool, fun tool. So now we've talked about, links and attachments and how to look at them. And we're going to talk a little bit about like phishing in the wild, like cool themed attacks that I've seen. So this one was, COVID-19 in almost every single major incident throughout the world, whether it be like a terrorist activity, a natural event, a global pandemic, whatever, like attackers use that as well to their advantage. So they're quickly spinning up attacks to look at, how can they prey on people. So during COVID, they sent out phishing emails about COVID. They sent them, I saw about testing kits and masks and PPE and stuff like that, or helping COVID victims and sending money and stuff like that. So something to be aware about, if there's something on the news or something in the media, and then you get an email about it, it might be kind of odd. You might want to look at it closer, do this process that we talked about, scan the emails. Tax season. So this happens, around April or, whenever really, but a lot of it comes during April when taxes are due. You'll get attackers that will spin up IRS scams, and they'll, email a bunch of people, tell them, excuse me, hey, your taxes are due, or someone filed your taxes on your behalf and you get more money if you, click on this link, stuff like that. But it's just another thing to be aware of, like, I don't know, verify this with the IRS, like talk to your accountant, maybe tell them like, hey, should I be getting this? Like, does this make sense? Did I already get my return back? Then I shouldn't get, a bunch of traffic from the IRS, but it's another thing to be aware of. Package deliveries. So an organization I worked at once, we would, create our own simulated phishing emails, whatever. We would come up with a theme all the time. It was really fun. And I still remember we did this once around Christmas. A lot of people, myself included, we order a lot of stuff from Amazon. We buy things in the store less and less. I feel like every day my wife has multiple packages at the door and she never knows what they are somehow, but she does. So it's awesome. But we get packages all the time, and I get emails all the time saying, hey, your package has been delivered. We did this once to this organization, very similar to this. I don't remember the carrier. We said, hey, your package has arrived, or we couldn't deliver it. I think we said, actually, please click this link and we can set up a new delivery time. Our click rates were like sky high. I think we had to actually stop reporting them because so many people clicked on the link, and we just kind of nulled that campaign because we were afraid to tell our management, our senior board and stuff, that in a very large amount of people had fallen for this fish and clicked on it. Because then we were like, oh man, we're not really doing our jobs. Maybe we shouldn't do that. But it was really bad, really convincing, and it was fun, but also concerning. So I think there's a question about QR codes, but this is another thing that I've been seeing a lot lately. So QR codes, you scan them on your phone. They're getting more and more popular. I've seen them, conferences will use them to register or check into places. Restaurants will use them. Some menus I've seen, especially with COVID, they won't have a physical menu. They'll just have a piece of paper that says scan this QR code. And, QR codes by themselves aren't malicious. They have legitimate purposes all over the world, all the time, that are being used. But attackers now know that, so they're putting them in phishing emails. So in this one, you read the email, you could look at this link, you could hover over it, see maybe it's malicious or not, and be like, oh, maybe let me just go to this QR code. And the QR code could be to a malicious, login page, or to some place for malware or something like that. It could go all over the board. So, I mean, I would be concerned. I would probably get this in front of my security team, or just ignore it or block it, or whatever my action was. Because you don't know where this is going to go. I mean, it looks like it could be Facebook. It could be something totally different. And I personally, I don't know about, maybe you guys are different. I don't get a lot of emails legitimately that have QR codes in them. I not yet, at least. I use QR codes if it's something I trust and or I know of, or I'm at a place that I have to. But for email, I would just send a link. Like I don't know why I would want to get my phone out and scan it. But these are getting more and more common. They're getting more and more popular. They're different. They're not something that was around, even 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and now they're all common. Banking stuff. So I get emails from my bank, but I don't get a lot. And this is common, impersonating your bank, and they want you to click this link. They use this really impressive logo. They probably just stole it from a legitimate email. And it looks, like sometimes it's hard to tell. Like, is this an actual email from my bank? And if you followed our process, you look at the very top, the sender address. I don't think Chase would send me an email from thegaro.com. Maybe they would, but probably not. And what I would do personally, like if I was unsure, I would call my bank. I would I would pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I need to call someone at Chase." I would look at a different way to get their number. I wouldn't look at this email. I would Google it, or I would look at like a check or a bank card that I have or something, and I would give them a call and say, "Hey, are you trying to contact me? Do you need something from me? Is there something going on with my account?" Or I'd go to the bank, if people still do that. But finding a different way to verify this rather than just being like, "Oh, it's from my bank. Let me click on it." Um, Wire transfers, I covered a little bit about this with BECs, banking information. Like this is really common because it's where the money is. It's why people used to rob banks a lot. It's probably not as common anymore, but it's people know, you have a bank. A lot of people do online banking. That's why attackers target it sometimes because they can ensure that you're going to, click the link and give them money or process money or stuff like that. We kind of cover this, use another method, scrutinize any messages that are identifying a problem. If your account gets shut off, if there's fraud, that's usually what your bank does. They don't email you first and say, "Hey, maybe you should click on this link, send us this information, and we'll help you out." Like, yeah, you get emails sometimes saying like this activity is weird. You can take a look at it and get a report on it. But your bank's never really asking you to send them money. Like that's very odd. If they're asking you to wire money, also very odd. Like so just things to keep in mind and have a plan in place or a thought process like what can I do if this comes up. So a lot of these lead to email credential compromise. So a lot of these links, some of them will deliver malware, some of them will steal some information or make you download something, whatnot. But most of the links, they want your creds, they want your credentials, they want to steal those and sell them, or steal those and impersonate you. So if you look at this one, like this web page doesn't look that bad. Like it has the Microsoft logo, it's got the sign-in information. Like at first glance, like yeah, it looks legit. But then you look at the web page up here and it's like accountoffice.dynv6.net. Like that's kind of odd. But that's what attackers are doing. They're mirroring, these login pages. They want you to log in, and then they, on the back end, they're capturing your credentials. And what I've seen a few places, which is pretty nasty, is they'll let you put your credentials in first. So it looks like this. You put it in, automatically it'll say incorrect username or password. And it's storing, the username and password that you put in. You hit OK, you put your stuff in again, it does it again, stores it. And then the third time, it redirects you to the actual Microsoft login page. And then you log in and you get to your email. So in that third attempt, you actually visit your email account and you're like, "Oh, whatever. I didn't, maybe I just like fat fingered my creds." And you didn't, that was what they had set up. And it's tough because if you aren't paying close enough attention, you would tell the security people, or you would think, "Hey, your stuff's safe. Like you didn't do anything. You just logged in." So then what can you do? We've talked about like what to identify, what to look out for. And, what do you do if you get one of these phishing messages? You really have like three options. You can report this message. So most all of the webmail applications, that's like your Gmail, your Yahoo, if you had AOL back in the day or still do, some people do, like you have a way or a button to report that phishing message to the platform. And then the platform will do whatever they want with it. They'll analyze it. They'll help people out. Like this is a Google message. They explain to you, what it is. They define it, and then you can determine whether you want to report it or not. A lot of organizations, if you work at them, they're going to have a security team and a way, hopefully, that you can either forward the message or hit a button and send it. But that's kind of like the first thing you can do is report it. The second thing, you can share it. You can take this to LinkedIn, social media, talk to your friends about it, whatever, and take a screenshot of it in a safe way and say, hey, I got this message. It's bad. What do you think about it? Or don't click on it. Or you can just delete it. If you don't want to do any of those things, you don't want to get involved, you don't want to share it, you don't want to interact with it, you can just delete the message and carry about your day. That's safer than you interacting with it or keeping it in your mailbox and hoping, that it just goes away, because you might, search for something and have it come up or accidentally click it or something like that. So like, just delete it. It's super easy. And how this plays into this is a little bit more advanced, but this plays into a larger ecosystem for hackers. So there's things called initial access brokers. They gain a foothold into an organization, and there's a bunch of reports about this. And the major cybersecurity organizations and threat intel companies will release this, but they've done a lot of studying on how this works. They have people on the dark web buying creds and stuff like that. But what they do, there's organizations that all they do, hackers. I shouldn't even call them organizations because they're hackers. They prey on people. They get their credentials. They get a foothold into the organization, and then they sell them. They sell them to someone else, another organization that wants to deliver malware or wants to sell this access to someone else to do something, to steal information. A lot of it is like ransomware, honestly, and that's where it usually goes. And then there's like a third team that does. I don't think it's in this graphic, but they do like the customer support payment service process. So like the initial access brokers get you in, then they hand it over to like a malware broker, whatever. And then they're looking for people that want to drop different malware, ransomware, stuff like that. And then they drop it and then they're done. And then a third group processes the payment. So they're the ones that are like, hey, here's how you get Bitcoin. Send me this in MoneyGram, whatever it is, like whatever their mode of payment is, and they handle it. And it's like 3 different organizations all getting paid along the way. And I think like the last report I read about this, like the initial access brokers, they're selling access to organizations, like a foothold in an organization for a couple $1,000s, like not much at all, like $1,000 or $2 maybe, and probably even cheaper than that at this point. And then, like the malware people, that can get a little bit higher because you can do ransomware, and that could be, depending on the organization, like, millions of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, whatever. And then the payment processors, I don't know what they make or want to know, but they're the ones that like, they will literally like show you sample files that are encrypted. They'll help you decrypt your stuff. They'll help you set up a Bitcoin wallet and pay them in Bitcoin, like everything you can think of. I was at a conference earlier this year, and one of the guys, I think he was from Microsoft, he was like, be prepared for if you ever get in this situation with ransomware and you pay these people and you get to this point, like be prepared for the best customer service you'll ever have in your life, because these people want you to pay and they're like super involved and super good at their job, and they will make sure that it's super easy for you to pay them and get your files back and stuff like that. And I was like, oh man, that's crazy, but it's also like super disappointing that they have this. And then back to the military, like skills and stuff like that. I know, the whole purpose of this conference is to get veterans into security, or if you're in security, to develop more skills and get better. And like I did not study computer science in school. I kind of like learned this a lot through the military and then working in the industry and stuff like that. But I didn't say this before, I had an accounting degree in undergrad because I thought that would be cool. And then I did accounting work and it wasn't. But, a lot of things that I've learned in the military that I've done over my time have really helped in both of my jobs. And it's one of them is, like following processes and procedures. Like there's very few things in cybersecurity that aren't documented somewhere. And it's just finding that. And that's the same way in the military, like in the Army specifically, where I come from, like there's a field manual or an ADP or something for everything. Like there's very few things in the Army and in the military in the general that like you're making up on your own. Like that just doesn't happen. Like you follow a process, you look at a resource, you talk to someone else and get a starting point. And that is the same exact thing in cybersecurity. Like you don't have to figure out all this stuff on your own. You just have to find the right resources and figure it out and put in the time and read the documentation, listen to the podcast, do those things. And then all of a sudden, like people are asking you questions about it and you become like the person. You do have to study the material, though. I mean, it doesn't come easy. This field is so large, like it's a continuous process. When you're starting to interview for organizations, like you have to treat it like a board. You have to do your own research, understand the people that you're interviewing with, understanding the skills, the organization, the culture, and practice, like prep, like come up with your resume and like have points to talk about and how they align with the organization and stuff like that. Just like when you go to boards, like for the enlisted people and like officers, it's a little bit different, their boards, but like same thing, you still have to have all your stuff ready. Like you want your resume up to date, look good, have a clean, clean suit, all that kind of stuff. And, be smart about what you're trying to do. Um, Staying calm, like a lot, the military is crazy. Like things happen all the time. You're with all these different people and you're doing trainings and exercises and you're sleeping in crazy places and you get out of your comfort zone and stuff like that. Like the real world doesn't have that exposure. Like, and that's a huge advantage to you guys being veterans and being in the military is like you've dealt with chaos and you've come out on the other side of it and other people haven't. They just go to school, they do whatever and then they start working and they work forever and they retire. And like you've been in the military, you've traveled places, you've worked with other people, like use that to your example. And like some of like the smartest dudes I've ever worked with, like when I deployed last year, like the Green Beret guys are like, hey man, like chaos breeds chaos, anxiety breeds anxiety, fear breeds fear. So like if you're in a weird situation, whether that's like a cyber incident where everyone's stressing out, they're worried about what's going on, like maybe it's ransomware, maybe it's malware, something like that, like you getting like super worked up and anxious and crazy helps no one. And just like in the military, like something bad happens, like the person that's acting crazy isn't helping anyone. It's the person that's like calm and trying to be logical and smart and taking a breath and like doing that kind of stuff. It is far more beneficial than the person that's going crazy. Um, and just understanding that and maybe selling that to an employer and saying like, hey man, I've seen some crazy stuff and I came out on the other side and this is what I learned from it. This is how I know I am as a person and a leader, and I'm better for it because of this, and that's a huge advantage. And like showing that you have an interest, saying like, hey, I've done all this research, I've read all these blogs, like I want to learn in this field, I've done this at home, blah blah blah. Like that shows major initiative. And I've got some really cool resources here. I'll find a way to get you guys the slides, but these are all like my top things, the things that I like and recommend and try and do. Like podcasts, I try and listen to podcasts when I'm driving to work or if I'm on a road trip or something. And like some of them are long, some of them are short. I work in some military ones too, but these are all the tech ones. The news sites, I try and check news sites, every day or every other day or whatever. Publications, I talked about the DBIR. I try and read that every single year. There's other ones like this IBM Cost of a Data Breach is really good. They come out with that yearly. Mandiant M Trend, stuff like that. Like it might be even good to read that twice a year, but that would be something really good to prep for an interview to say like, oh, last year, here's the trend and stuff like that. Top tools, we went over these, Virus Total, hands down, my favorite one, URL scan, any run, stuff like that. Twitter feeds, really, really good sources of information, what's going on in the industry, things that are, like leading and bleeding, like the latest and greatest stuff. And then top books. My favorite book of all time, The Cuckoo's Egg by Cliff Stahl. Like, I think that should be mandatory reading for everyone in this field. I've read it like almost a half a dozen times at this point. It is extremely relevant. If you haven't, like, read it right away. It's super cool. It's about a guy doing incident response in the 80s, Cliff Stahl. He does a lot of stuff that we're still struggling to do right now, like logging, detection, IDS, honeypots, things like that, using like wild stuff like beepers and like pagers, if you guys remember what those are, and like printing out like logs and reviewing them and stuff like that. And here we are, in 2023, and we're still having issues doing that. So like everyone should read that book. I love it. The other ones, like some of them, these are a little bit military ones, like Fifth Domain's a little bit military-ish, Dark Territory a little bit too, but they're still great cyber books. Highly recommend them. You're going to need to read if you're going to stay and thrive in this field. Um, I think that's my last. Yeah, that's my last slide. So I'm going to hop over here and see what we've got for questions. Um, So let me start at the top. So I think Chris had a question about QR code. Oh, there's a few questions now. Sorry, guys. My screen, I couldn't look at these while we were going out through the presentation. So I apologize for not being able to answer them throughout. Do you know how to filter out QR codes with the main vendors? So that's going to be made like vendor specific. I don't know. I'm not an expert with all of them. There might be a way you can block them. But I don't know the answer to that. I'm sure some of them have ways. I know like Gmail and stuff like that does not. So Rob, you'd have to talk to your vendors specifically for that. Baby Shark, that's not a question. Is virus total better than URL scan? So it depends. URL scan does a little bit more in-depth analysis. Virus Total, though, has a lot of resources that it checks, and it's been around for a long time. URL Scan doesn't just do that exclusive sneak peek of the page. It will do, their own analysis of it, and it will tell you, where the site goes. If it's a link that's shortened, it'll extract it for you. It'll give you its own reputation. So it's not worse than Virus Total. It's just different. And honestly, I like to use both of those tools. Virus Total to start to see what they know about it, and then URL scan to get a little bit more of like an active interrogation of the site, and then address accordingly. G Cena, you asked about Windows Sandbox. I'm not 100% sure what your question was on that. I guess if you still have a question, you can type it up and we'll go through it. Good old Quishing, I like it. Supply chains are messy, yeah, super hard. CMMC is like going to try and fix that on the government space, but they've got their work cut out for them because a lot of the small organizations are going to have a really hard time doing that. Would people who click on malicious links be appropriately labeled corporate sellouts if they're either knowingly or unknowingly clicking it? I don't know if I would call them corporate sellouts, but I would maybe say there's a potential for, like some negligence or maybe even like an insider threat that doesn't care or that's doing it intentionally. But like that's also part of the organization to train their people and help them out. And yeah, Derek called them insider threats. I think that's another good term for them. Chris, yeah, I can get you a copy of these and anyone else that needs it. Nestor, so the name of my book is How to Catch a Fish. So probably the easiest way is if you guys go to LinkedIn and follow me. I've got a screenshot of the book on my profile. I've got pictures of it and stuff like that. You can just go to Amazon and type in How to Catch a Fish or whatever major platform you use. It's on Amazon, but that's the best way, honestly. Like I put out most of my stuff on LinkedIn. I don't use any other tools, social media wise. If you're talking about the book I was talking about, Cuckoo's Egg, that is the best one to read as well. Highly recommend buying that. Is there any in-depth training for anyone to help their company improve their email phishing security programs? There's no certifications. I would love to chat with you offline about it because that's something I'm working through with a couple people, in like a consulting role, and it's very challenging. Like what I'm trying to do with people is take these reported phishing emails and work them into like in-person training. So someone getting in front of a human, much like we did today, explaining why these phishing emails are actually phishing. And what I've seen is that's far better than any video you can watch and stuff like that. I don't know of any certifications that do that. Maybe there is. I'm not aware of any. No, there's no NIST, CIS, ISO process to evaluate an email, not to my knowledge, and that's kind of why I wrote this book. When I was doing incident response at an organization, I was managing the security mailbox. I was pretty new to the field, and it was kind of like figure it out. I was getting information from all these different disparate sources like blogs, videos, stuff like that, talking to other analysts at events and meetups and stuff like that. And I was like, man, this would be great if it was all in one place. I couldn't find it, and that's kind of why I wrote the book. So I'm like, man, this would be really helpful. It is not overly technical. It's more for anyone, everyday users, entry-level analysts and stuff like that. It doesn't get too far into the weeds because this impacts people all over, and it's kind of just a starting point. Private versus public scan. I usually do a public scan because I don't really care if it's something I'm nervous about. I might do a private scan. That's just, the results are just shared, available with the public, versus a private scan. I don't think they let other people look at those, but still, the organization has that resource. Any other ideas on how to improve security awareness beyond the traditional training? Yeah, getting in front of people. Training is a people process. So be a human and teach other humans what to do, like we did in this presentation. I think that is better. Every security awareness company I talk to has the best videos in the world, and they're all just videos. Maybe they have a game or something, but in my opinion, they're all still videos. I don't think any are like much better than others. So I think getting in front of people, showing them why, showing them actual phishing emails that other people reported, maybe doing a demonstration like we did, maybe sending them an email, and then they go over it as a group and say, hey, this greeting was jacked up, this body was jacked up, this link was jacked up, and they do it together. And then, maybe when they're back in their office, they can come together and be like, hey, remember when we looked at this together? Like, let's do it again because I got this weird email. Incorporated any AI machine learning tools to check? I have not. That's a great question, Derek. I have been trying to play around with using AI to scan URLs and email content and stuff like that. I think that's great, but a lot of the AI tools stopped in like 2022 ingesting data. They're not doing like live ingestion. So it's making it very hard to do like a virus total type scan of a URL, or, URL scan, whatever. So I have not been doing that, and I'm trying to, but that's an awesome question. And Chris, do I look at the header of an email? Yes, that's covered in my book of how to do it. We didn't in this, just, for a sake of time. And then we also cover what DKIM, SPF, DMARC are in the email, and those are in my book as well. Those are authentication methods. We talk about it, and it's explained more. AJ, what's up, man? One of my buddies from a cyber school. What is the most effective phishing email you've seen? In my company's Know Before campaign, the most effective phish was soliciting a fake GoFundMe link for paying for fake employees. That's awesome. So AJ had a GoFundMe one. The most effective training one was that package delivery one, hands down. It was right around Christmas. It worked the best. 100%. That was it. The most realistic live one, it's been Microsoft phishing emails for account lockouts, or business email compromises are hard because they're like a lot of times like actually compromised accounts. So they came from, the legitimate person. So it's hard to test those out. Chris, why would we need to train employees on checking those header details? So the headers could tell you additional technical details about the email. So they could tell you who the sender was, what IP it was from, what path it took to get to you. It's a little bit more advanced than most everyday users would, but it would give you more indicators of what's suspicious and what's not. And I think I said this, we cover that in my book. It's got a walkthrough of the process, the tools. MX Toolbox is my favorite header analyzer tool. It breaks things out, but there's other ones, like there's a Google one and a Microsoft one, stuff like that. Super easy to do. Takes like 5 seconds and you can look at a header. Kevin, our questionable use from a phishing identification standpoint. Yes, I agree, Kevin, about DKIM and SPF. It's, I've worked at organizations that spent a lot of money on email and clients and stuff that weren't using DKIM and SPF like properly. And I've also worked at like small shoestring places that are the same, that do implement it. And I've seen attackers use it and not use it. So like, it's not a once over, like, yes, if you're using it, we're good to go, versus no, not. You could train on users about message headers, but they're probably not going to do it. Correct. The instance I've dealt with that where users clicked on HTML attachment so blocking attachments is great. That's a good point. I was at a talk recently that they were like, hey, there's a RDP, I think, attachment. And like, these are IT guys, and they're like, I've never sent an RDP link in an email. And like, neither should anyone in our organization. And they check their settings and they're like, yep, we're allowing it through. So like, knowing what your people should send and receive is a good thing to block. Like, most people need Word, Excel, PowerPoint, stuff like that. But like, a lot of places like .exe files are blocked because that's just bad. Zip files sometimes can be blocked. You know, that just depends. But I appreciate. I'm really glad we had a really good turnout. These questions were awesome. I enjoyed this a lot. I hope it was beneficial to all of you guys. I appreciate this late, you guys, attending and being engaged and involved, and hopefully it was useful. And if anyone wants the slides, I'm happy to get them to you. Please, like hit me up on LinkedIn. Follow me, send me a connect, send me a message, whatever, and I'm happy to chat more. But thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good night and the rest of your weekend.